The Goon Squad, a guild famously known for their in-game pranks, have a unique accomplishment to their name. They're the only Horde guild to ever kill Thrall. How, you ask? Well, back in vanilla there was a quest in Stonetalon, part of which had a quiz, where getting a wrong answer gave you a debuff that made you hostile with your own faction for about 15 minutes. Goon Squad rounded up a bunch of their rating bests, deliberately debuffed themselves and set off to Orgrimmar to test it out. Blizzard fixed the quest shortly after the exploit was discovered, knocking the debuff down to 5 minutes and reducing all stats by 50% rather than turning you hostile. During Alpha, they only intended to have 200 quests total in-game, 100 for each side. They wanted to have quest supplement grinding and not be the means of actually leveling, but players like quests, so they added more. But not enough, as you could not reach level 60 by just doing quests. Once you got around to the 50s, you would eventually run out of quests and had to grind. Alchemists could create flasks only at an alchemy lab. There were 2 in the game, one in Skolomonts and one in BWL, so they had to go there each time if they wanted to create a flask. In Firelands, there is a secret path that involves very minor wall jumping that you could take that takes you around some really annoying trash straight to the spider boss. An NPC named Oglathorpe Obnocticus can be found in Booty Bay. He's a reference to Oglathorpe, one of the really stupid plutonium aliens from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and their source of knowledge, Orbnocticus, a giant disco ball. The Oglathorpe insists is actually a supercomputer. Over the course of WoW, hunters have had 10 different aspects. Aspect of the Hawk, Monkey, Beast, Ironhawk, Dragonhawk, Cheetah, Pack, Viper, Fox, and Aspect of the Wild. Some raid additions, such as /raid warning and the ability to mark mobs and threat meters, were only available with specific add-ons before Blizzard added them themselves into the game. During the Cataclysm beta, Blizzard added a mob called Epic Maximus, flying above the Maelstrom. In the Dread Waste questline, you help free all the Paragons of the Galaxy and learn their history. Then, in the Siege of Orgrimmar, you have to kill all of them, including one of the bugs you helped grow during a series of daily quests. When Death Knights were added in Wrath, they were extremely overpowered. They had a talent called Shadow of Death, which turned them into a ghoul when they died, that worked in arenas. Glyph of Death and Decay had a random chance to horror whoever took damage from it for 2 seconds. They could turn themselves into an undead with Lichborn and heal themselves back up to full 2 times over with the 2 Death Coil glyphs. Chain of Ice would slow movement speed by 90% and would go down as the spell went on, giving them the best slow ever. And on top of all this, they dealt massive damage. Before the Shaman ability Fire Nova, there was a totem called Fire Nova Totem that, once dropped, started a 5-second timer. After 5 seconds it would explode, doing tons of damage and stunning everyone caught within its blast radius. In early Wrath, you could only change out your glyphs by standing next to a Lexicon of Power, and Lexicon of Powers were only located next to Scribe Trainers. Before BC, there were no guild banks, so most guilds just used low-level characters to store everything the guild needed. There is a gnome in the gardens of Castle Stormwind by the name of Tyrion. This is a reference to Tyrion Lannister, the imp from A Game of Thrones. The low-level rams and wolves in Altaric Valley were added so low-level players who joined the battle would kill them to level up and upgrade friendly troops with turn-in items. The word min-maxing pretty much didn't exist during vanilla raiding because Blizzard had no idea what class balance was. Also, most people weren't using any rotation at all, seeing as half of the abilities players had were useless. Hunters in BC could macro their entire rotation into one button, and bind it to a mouse scroll. In Undercity, there is a butler named Harbinger Balthazar. His name is a reference to Balthasar, Romeo's servant and trusted friend who serves the Montague family. He can be found walking around the 4 Montague bankers. Before Kata, all classes had weapon skill which factored into your chance to hit and land glancing blows. And weapon skill took an extremely long time to level. Each time a shaman did a talent respec from enhancement, he lost all weapon skills with 2-handed maces and axes, because they were a talent in the enhancement tree. Tauren is an anagram for nature. Warlocks were able to summon people into battlegrounds, including people out of the level bracket. There is a huge smiley face below Karazhan. Wintergrass was supposed to have aerial combat. You can see it on the back of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion box. There were 4 trinket slots back in WoW's original alpha build. The Duskwood Nightwatch militia is a reference to the Night's Watch from A Game of Thrones, as they both share similar names and fight the undead. There's an axe called the Arcanite Reaper. This weapon was famous during vanilla because of its 3.8 weapon speed, which made it extremely powerful in the hands of warriors and enhanced shamans. It's now the heirloom axe we have today. Nazgrim was a Horde quest giver for 3 different zones before he became a boss in the Siege of Orgrimmar. PvP trinkets were class specific and only removed 3 forms of CC depending on your class. For example, for priests it would only remove fears, stuns, and polymorphs. For hunters it would only remove stuns, roots, and slows, and for druids it would only remove charms, fears, and stuns. There's an NPC next to Harris Pilton in Shatran City named Ricol Nichi that is only viewable by priests who have the Eye of Divinity equipped. The best level 60 warrior DPS item back in vanilla was a pair of level 49 mail gloves, because they had weapon skill bonuses on them that greatly reduced the chance of glancing blows. If you enter the house north of Golshire at 7:40 AM, you will see 5 children forming a pentagram. You can hear banshee screams, creepy music, and the Cthulhu sound file saying you will die. In the Wrath pre-patch, Readiness, a marksman talent that reset all your cooldowns, was moved down the tree, making it possible to grab along with Bestial Wrath. At the time, Bestial Wrath lasted 18 seconds and gave the hunter and their pet CC immunity. So for a short while, hunters could be CC immune for almost 40 seconds straight in PvP. Paladin Blessings lasted 5 minutes, so by the time you buffed 40 raid members, the first one you buffed would have 2 to 3 minutes left on their blessing. So Paladins were essentially just rebuffing the raid all the time. In the tunnel before the Undercity throne room, you can see rose petals that people threw on Arthas before he killed his father. You can also see blood on the floor where his crown fell after being stabbed. It used to be that you weren't able to see buffs on enemy players. That's why mages had a detect magic spell. While shielded with an absorption effect like Power Word Shield, a tanking warrior or druid did not gain rage. This wasn't fixed until early Wrath. You used to be able to communicate cross-faction by using lines to make words. In beta, Power Word Shield and Power Word Fortitude were called Holy Word Shield and Holy Word Fortitude. But Blizzard decided they wanted pallies to have all the cool holy names in their spells, so they changed the priest ones to power words. In vanilla, for hunters, there was a class quest chain to get the most powerful bow in the game. The quest required you to go around and search for 4 demons that were rare spawns and defeat them. But you couldn't have anyone else around you or your pet out to fight them. Each demon had a special ability that could only be countered with one of the hunter abilities. Kilfran the Craze would hit super hard and enrage periodically, which could be dispelled with Scorpion Sting, which also made him only do 1 damage. Simon the Seductress would slowly cast a lightning bolt that could be silenced with Viper Sting. Solinar the Slayer could be rooted for 30 seconds with Wing Clip. The Doombringer would put a debuff on you that would kill you almost instantly if within 30 yards of him. His weakness was taking super crazy amounts of damage from Serpent Sting. Rogue poisons used to have stacks, so it was not uncommon for rogues to have to reapply poisons mid-boss fight. That is, if the boss wasn't straight up immune to poisons in the first place. For a short while in Wrath, Sweeping Strikes worked with Bladestorm and allowed each hit to land twice. This combined with an armor pen trinket would allow warriors to hit up to 10 times on the same target with 100% armor pen in less than 6 seconds, making Bladestorm completely overpowered. Before Wrath, bosses had spell immunities and resisted spell damage. For example, bosses like Ragnaros were immune to all fire spells, and mechanical bosses were immune to all poisons. For a short time at the beginning of Cataclysm, there was an exploit in the game where hunters could have both Aspect of the Hawk and Aspect of the Fox up at the same time. Malkorak, one of the bosses in the Siege of Orgrimmar and the head of the Korkron, killed the undead and Blood Elf ambassadors after his spies told him that they were bad-talking Garrosh behind his back over the mana bombing of Theramore. Before patch 3.02, rogues had their own class-specific profession where they could make their own poisons, similar to runeforging for Death Knights. Although never confirmed, there is a rumor that Ironforge Air Station was supposed to be the gnome starting area. The Destruction Warlock rotation in the Burning Crusade consisted just of spamming Shadow Bolt and nothing else. In Undercity, there are 2 chemists with Fooly and Cooley in their names. Their names are an obvious reference to the anime series FLCL, or Fooly Cooley. In vanilla, Paladin Seals were 30-second buffs that gave them an effect that could be consumed by Judgment for a different effect. For example, a Paladin might cast Seal the Crusader, which increased attack speed at the cost of lower weapon damage, immediately cast Judgment, which would place a debuff on the target increasing their holy damage taken, then cast Seal of Righteousness, which made melee attacks deal additional holy damage, and Judge on cooldown, Judgment of the Righteous just dealt damage, until they had to refresh the Judgment of the Crusader debuff.